This show is proud to partner with TrueTechTools.com. You can save 8% off many of the items at their site by using the Shop Talk discount code. Hello and welcome back to the HVAC Shop Talk podcast. My name is Zach Ciota, and I'm coming to you live from my lair, deep within the confines of North Carolina, in the back country, about a mile from the interstate. So it's a kind of an oxymoron, isn't it? A mile from the interstate, back country, but this is the country. But I can sit on my front porch and actually watch the cars on the interstate. There's actually road noise in the middle of the country. That's right. That's okay. I want to start off the show by talking about something that doesn't seem like, it's not directly HVAC related. It has to do with power tools. I do a lot of power tool stuff. For those of you who watch me over on Zach's Tool Shop, I test a lot of power tools. Do the same thing we do with HVAC, just testing tools. How many RPM, how much torque, how fast do they cut, how fast do they drill, all that stuff. But about, 3 or 4 months ago, maybe, I'm not quite sure if it's that long, but I purchased, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, this is a Hercules impact driver model HD81B. It's 12 volts. I have a 4 amp hour battery on it. Has a little battery charge indicator. This one's 2 out of 3. Looks like I've been using it a little bit today. And at first, I was like, these things suck. They are horrible. They're weak. And keep in mind that before I purchased this thing, this Hercules 12-volt impact driver, I had M12 stuff from Milwaukee. And M12 Milwaukee tools, the fuel tools, because there's different levels of tools I found in Milwaukee. In M12, which is their 12-volt tools, they'll have regular tools, then they'll have fuel. It's very, very different going from fuel to the regular tools. The regular tools are just like everyday, like their impact driver and drill that are 12 volts aren't nearly as spectacular as their fuel stuff, which can beat a lot of people's 18 and 20-volt tools, which are the same thing. But with the Hercules here, it was pretty daggone weak. I was unimpressed with it. It's a brush tool, doesn't have a brushless motor. This is like the equivalent of an HVAC guy going from a PSC motor to an ECM motor, that same mentality. With the brushed motors, they're less efficient, they're bigger tools, they're not as powerful and all that stuff. But this one was, I didn't think it was very powerful at all. I did some testing. It didn't show that it has much power. You can watch that on the Tools channel. This impact driver, I think, it's less than 100 foot-pounds of torque, because that puts it in over 1,000. It was less than 1,000. I think it came out like 600 or 700 inch-pounds of torque. I should say that, inch-pounds of torque, which is minuscule when you have something like a flex impact driver, 24-volt impact driver that gets over 2,500 inch-pounds of torque. So I was like, this thing's awful. This thing is horrible. But especially over the last few weeks, I've come to realize something. As I've been kind of remodeling in here and setting things up so I can work out of here a little bit more, I've noticed that I've reached for this tool a whole lot, actually. It's weird because a lot of the time I don't need like the killer power of an M18 because I have the M18 fuel impact driver, and it will literally break the socket adapter in half. During one of the tests I did, it snapped the socket adapter in half, and I have a feeling that it would do that on a routine occasion if I was testing it a whole lot. And I don't need that much power. It's 2,000 inch-pounds of torque or so, I think. And a lot of times, especially as a service tech, I used the rigid brush drill for years and years and years. It's sitting right over there on the shelf right there. I can see it right now. I've had it for over 10 years. I recently added a 4 amp hour battery to it, mainly because it wouldn't stand up unless you put a 4 amp hour battery on it, because the 4 amp hour battery has a big flat bottom, and the 2 amp hour is just narrow, so it tips over. And it was worth just it being able to stand up on its own. So I've started to reach for this Hercules, and this makes sense because this goes back to being a service tech. Service techs don't need a huge amount of power out of their impact or drills a lot of the time. It's more important, for me, what I found is more important to have a compact drill or impact driver. If you have to pick one, I think you have to go with the drill. Although with this particular Hercules, I prefer the impact driver. And you can do a lot of drilling with impact drivers now. There are a lot of impact rated, like paddle bits and stuff, which I didn't really ever use an impact driver for that. It always seemed unnatural when you tried to drill in a paddle bit with an impact driver. because it was just, I felt like it didn't match up. It didn't feel right. But if you have a small 12-volt drill, you can drill out some holes for testing. You can screw in screws on a unit, which is, you be careful when you're doing that anyway, because you screw in screws in on a unit, especially with an impact driver, you're going to route out all the screws, especially when you're working with something like say, a Goodman unit, which has a propensity for having screws routed out on it. You don't want to go any further in that direction than you have to. It's almost like you should use a nut driver on a unit like that. And on a more substantial unit like your trains and stuff like that, where the cabinets have a little bit more thickness to the metal, you could use one of these weaker impact drivers. But you still have to be careful, because it's very easy to route those screws out and destroy them. So basically what I'm saying is, bigger and better isn't always actually better for all applications. If you're an installer and you're drilling a bunch of duct together, you're putting self-tappers into ductwork all day long, then you probably want something else. Maybe not M18. I don't really think you need M18 for that either. More than likely, some moderately powerful. I had a Makita brushless that was a little bit less powerful than an M18. Milwaukee makes a brushless that's in between fuel and their basic stuff. That would probably work just fine. In fact, there's probably a lot of stuff that works just fine. You don't have to step it all the way up to that M18 fuel. I purchased a Ryobi Quiet Strike impact driver, which is weaker. It's like these hydraulic impact drivers, if you're familiar with like the Surge from Milwaukee. It's very quiet though, so that's kind of nice. If you're on a job site, you have to hear the rat-tat-tat-tat of an impact driver all day. It's a little bit annoying. And if you're in close quarters with a lot of metal, it can hurt your ears, to be honest with you. So it's nice to have something where they take that into account, and it's powerful enough for most things. It's not nearly as powerful as some of these high-end impact drivers that are loud, but it'll get most of those self-tappers in no problem, and you won't have any issues there, and you can save some hearing. So just a little perspective on that. It's kind of something I was thinking about, something I noticed here. You always think you want the biggest and best, but end up reaching for the Hercules a whole lot. And so far, so good. They seem decent, except for, the power. I mean, the build quality is fine. Easy to handle. Fits in the tool bag better. So can't go wrong with Milwaukee Rigid. There's a lot of 12-volt tools out there. Makita makes some. I know Bosch makes some. A lot of people make some. Just food for thought there, guys. So a few weeks ago, I talked about an app called Upside that you use when you buy fuel. And Upside is an app that saves you a certain amount of cash back per gallon. And someone had sent me an email letting me know about this app. I went ahead and downloaded it. I've been using it for, I don't know how long, if I can actually tell how long it's been on here. I don't know if I can. I don't know if it has all that stuff on here. I didn't take a look at it. But for example, here I can see that top nearby offers here, and I'm going to put this on the screen while I'm talking. Top nearby offers include, let's see, $3.68 per gallon. You're saving 17 cents per gallon back at the Exxon, which is pretty typical. There's an Exxon down the street from where I live, and they always have pretty good deals there. And that brings you to $3.68. There's another one that's $3.94. That's much higher, so I would definitely not go there. And not always are the prices updated in real time, so you might have a little bit of lag where you go to the station. It's like, oh, it's actually lower now. We saved 11 cents a gallon today when we went to Burgaw. We've earned $34 already, and I'll probably get a couple more from this latest fill-up. And you can actually turn all that money into a whole bunch of different stuff. You can send it directly to your bank. It has here, I'm looking at the screen. You can send it to any one of a whole bunch of different stores, including Ace Hardware. I'm saying that because we're all men here that love to buy tools, right? Ace Hardware, Home Depot. Let me see if there's any other. There's Walmart. You can get your Hart tools there. Hey, all right, get your Hart tools. There's a whole lot of them out here. Amazon, you can buy plenty of tools on Amazon. Amazon's got some of the best prices. Good grief. I saw some Milwaukee tools that were lower than Home Depot's price on Amazon, significantly lower. Rear-handled M18 fuel circular saw was $199 on Amazon and like $270 at the store. It was pretty funny. I was taken aback by it. So it's just something that it has worked out for me, guys. I wanted to relay that to you because anywhere we can save money, especially on gasoline these days, is worthwhile. So check it out. It's the Upside app. You should be able to find it on your iPhone. I haven't seen if it's on Android or not. I'm assuming it is, but if it's not, I apologize. I know iPhone guys, you can find it, and it saved me a good bit of money, and you can just consider it savings. You can save it for the tool you want to buy. You can save it for your kid's birthday party. That's how I think I want to do it, unless my wife takes it from me, which she probably will. She's like, I need that money for Amazon, something or another. My son's buying a whole bunch of dorm room stuff, so probably dorm room stuff. But it's just food for thought. You know, while you're thinking about it, while you're thinking about buying a 12-volt drill, think about downloading the Upside app. We have a new sponsor at HVAC Shop Talk, Beckett. A lot of you guys know Beckett from their condensate pumps. They do make a mean condensate pump. We just did a video on those as well. There'll be more on that going forward. We're going to test them a little bit. We're going to see how they perform with a high lift. And I just have a few tests I'd like to run just in general to see how condensate pumps react. But Beckett makes more than just condensate pumps. Overflow safety switches, submersible parts washer pumps. I've never even heard of that. Condensate evaporator pans. But their condensate pumps have a wide range. They know what they're talking about. They make a quality pump. You can tell. When you look at a condensate pump and you can see the features that are left off, you can see the build quality issues. You don't have that with Beckett. Beckett knows what they're doing. They make a quality product with you in mind. You can find out more at Beckett. That's BECKETT.com/product-category/condensate-pumps. That is a mouthful right there. We'll put a link in the description because there's no way that you remembered that. Jobber, you can use the link getjobber.com/shop talk to get a special discount on their services. And just take a look at this. This is a Jobber website for those of you who are looking here. And so just take a look at this. We have the different features of Jobber. We have a client manager, scheduling and dispatching, invoicing and follow-ups, a mobile app, online booking, client hub, customer communications, job forms, reporting, credit card processing, email and postcard marketing, quoting, and follow-ups. They do a lot of stuff for your company, and they actually work with another sponsor of this show, Company Cam, which we'll talk about in just a second. For people in business, you give up so much of your time that you could be spending with your family, with your friends, or just having a good time or decompressing is taken up by all of these tasks which go back to your business. Jobber helps take some of that burden off of your shoulders. If you're a business owner, if you're an aspiring business owner, investigate this. If you're in business, check it out. getjobber.com/shop talk. We were talking about Company Cam, and here they are. The only app every contractor needs. You snap pictures, you're saved in a company feed. Your whole company is plugged in and know what's going on each job site. The boss man knows what his guys are doing. The guys know what each other are doing. You don't have project managers disconnected from their crews. Everybody's put together. You can store the photos. You sync them. You can share them. You cover your butt. And you stay plugged into each other. And it works with Jobber. So there's two sponsors right here that work together to help make your company a better company and give you back some of your life so you can spend time with your family, your friends, your dog, your gerbil, whatever. CompanyCam.com, getjobber.com/shop talk. So there's a debate that goes on in the HVAC community that's been going on for a long time. In fact, the HVAC community is pretty famous for coming back to the same debates over and over again, no matter how relevant they are. And one of the debates is, should we be using analog or digital gauges? Everybody out there is like, oh my gosh, not this again. And I'm only going to talk about it to say this. I think the time of advocating for analog gauges is over. And the reason why I think it's over is because now we have so many refrigerants, so many blends, so many options that could appear in our daily schedule as far as refrigerants that it's virtually impossible to carry enough analog gauges that have the PT on the gauge for all of these refrigerants. And I think what's going to happen if we continue to use analog gauges for whatever reason, perhaps you trust analog, you don't trust digital, perhaps you can only afford analog, It's just there's a whole bunch of different reasons you can justify using analog. But what's going to happen is you're going to get out to the job site, you're going to be doing a service call, and you're going to be working on a unit, and you're going to see a sticker on it that says 422D or 421A or 427A or MO99, and you're going to say, all right, well, I'll just use the PT for R22 because I have a gauge here that has 134, 22, and 410A on it. Or maybe you have a gauge that says R12, 22, and 502. Hey, you might be extremely analog out there. You might be going back to super analog. But what's going to happen when you do that, you're going to use the R22 PT chart, and it's going to be off somewhat. Depending on what refrigerant you're choosing, it's going to be off. Because almost all of these R22 replacements have a lower suction pressure in relation to the saturation temperature. Meaning, if you have R22, it's at around 58 psi, that correlates to about freezing. So you're right around 32 degrees. Now, if you're 58 psi at 407C, 422B, and several other replacement refrigerants, you're going to be above freezing. So the diagnosis process could be altered based on those different PT charts. Plus, you don't use the same style as for R22 because R22 is single component. You're going to be using bubble and dew point for the other refrigerants because they're all blends. They're all blends that boil off differently in an evaporator, and you have a temperature glide. Basically, if you have a blend with 3 or 4 different refrigerants in it, they're all going to boil off at different pressures because different pressures on different refrigerants correspond to different temperatures. So they're all going to be a little bit different, and then you're going to have a glide, a degree of temperature difference between one and the other, the greatest and the least, and that's your biggest glide. So you can't use the R22 PT chart. Now, that only matters if you actually care. It only matters if that means something to you. So if you go in there and you don't do superheat and subcooling, which at this point is the most basic form of troubleshooting there is no more I just look at pressures because it's irrelevant to just look at pressures. If you listen to many people out there, they will tell you, and I've heard this time after time, and I do think there is significance in pressures. Obviously, pressure will tell you something, but they always say look at the temperatures. And that's the important thing, especially when you're looking at an evaporator or a condenser and you don't even know what refrigerant it is. It's important that as you become more experienced of a technician, that you acquire some of this thinking because it's going to take you to a more perfected place. If you go from saying, well, we have 70 psi to we have 45 degree evaporator, we have a 40 degree evaporator, we have a 32 degree evaporator, what's going on? Is it airflow? Is it refrigerant? What's the problem out there? And there's a big difference. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit in the next section. But I think, and I want you guys to weigh in on this, if you're on YouTube, you can leave a comment, you can leave a live chat, whatever it is that you're available to do at that moment. If you're listening to this as a podcast, there is a comment page at our podcast page, but I don't think anyone ever uses that, and I don't ever check it. So it doesn't matter if you use it or not. I'll never see it. You can email me, hvacshoptalk@gmail.com. Is there any possible reason, besides that quick check, the Z-manifold check, to carry analog gauges? Now, I'd still carry stubbies. You can carry digital stubbies, too. That would be okay. The digital stubbies are more useful, like the Robinair gauges. I call them the Z-Connect, I believe, if I remember correctly. If you use a digital gauge that has a PT for several refrigerants in it, which those did have a PT for like 20 or 30 refrigerants, then you're much better off than using analog stubbies that have 3 refrigerants on them or 2 refrigerants on them or however many they fit on there. And it's harder to read the analog stubbies for saturation temperatures than it is for the digital just to give you the temperatures. It is important to understand the process, but at this point, I think we're past the point where analog teaching is relevant. All right, when I come back, we'll talk a little bit about the diagnosis process that I mentioned for having that cold evaporator coil. Now, EWC has been a partner of this show for the last 5 years, on and off, and they are the best forced air zoning company that I know of. EWC has quality products, their dampers, their control boards, They've been doing this stuff for a long time. They know what they're doing. Trey's been on the show before. It's been several years since Trey was on the show, but those are the type guys that they have working for them. Sharp guys. When you call their tech support, guess what? You talk to a human being, and that human being also knows his butt from a hole in the ground. And that is Southern talk for he knows what he's doing. They have all the things a contractor needs for forced air zoning. They have top-of-the-line zone panels, from zone panels that work with communicating systems all the way down to more basic panels for every application in every budget. EWC also carries thermostats. They have wireless thermostats, Wi-Fi thermostats, programmable, non-programmable, and everything you would expect a thermostat to be. And don't forget their app. EWC Controls has their own mobile app that's extremely helpful. And of course, you can find out more at ewccontrols.com or email info@ewccontrols.com. So Navac's been a partner with this show for a long time as well. And the new break-free power tube expander, the NT11L, is now on the market. I have it in my hands here at the shop. I released a video on it. You can find out more there on the YouTube. If you're not already subscribed, please go do that. If you have any questions about this product, I'm here for you guys. If there's something you want to know, I will find out. I will test it, and I will let you know. I tried to find out several things about the product. We measure the piping size before and after the expansion. We time the expansion. It's a cool tool. I really enjoyed it, and they have a ton of great stuff coming out of Navac. Battery powered. I don't know if you caught that. I don't know if I said that. It's a battery powered tool that goes along with their battery powered flaring tool, battery powered vacuum pumps. As you can see, they are breaking free from cords. They're also taking things that were not powered and making them powered just to make your life easier. You can find out more at navacglobal.com. Let's take a look-see here and see what kind of new products are coming out from Yellow Jacket. You guys have seen me use pretty much all of these so far. The Y-Jack Mano wireless dual-port manometer. Guys, been waiting for this thing for so long. You can have your differential static pressure to check your airflow on startup. It's just awesome, and their probes are so good. I enjoy using them so much. The Turbo Recover recovery machine, it recovered, as the kids would say, like butter. It was easy, didn't have any overheating issues. It worked beautifully. It is a DC recovery machine, a brushless motor, cutting-edge stuff, and Yellow Jacket makes sure that you have quality stuff every time. The Y-Jack charging and air kit, a charging and evac kit, all the stuff you need, great range, great quality. Just what you would expect from Yellow Jacket. So if you go to a service call or you start up a unit and the evaporator coil is at freezing or just below freezing, what are some possible causes based on the testing you do? So if you go into a call and you have an evaporator coil that's operating at freezing, and first of all, you have to verify what refrigerant is in that evaporator coil, because you are not measuring temperature per se. Maybe you're looking at a gauge, you see a pressure and you see a saturation, and you say, oh no, this thing's at freezing. Why is that? Well, make sure you know what refrigerant you're looking at. Because like I said in the previous segment, you could look at a refrigerant, and if you're looking at the wrong one's going to be at freezing, and one of them might be closer to 40 degrees. There's a big difference between R22 and R407C. When you take it to that smaller scale of R22 replacements, 407C isn't at freezing at 58 psi. It's above freezing, and enough above freezing where it could be during operating conditions that you see that 58 psi. It might be near the bottom of the operating conditions as far as sensible temperature, but it could be attained and be in normal working order. So you have to make sure the refrigerant that you're thinking of is the correct refrigerant, and hopefully that is labeled on the unit. It's a whole nother nightmare if it's not labeled, and good luck with that. That'd be a difficult day for anybody. So you go up and it's 32 degrees. Let's say it is R22. 32 degrees. So why is it operating at 32 degrees? First of all, what is the superheat? What is the subcooling? So let's take a first example. It's operating at 32 degrees. The superheat is 0. The subcooling is 5. Maybe it's 6. With a superheat of 0 and a freezing coil, You can check and see if the coil is completely covered in ice, because it's going to be airflow related most likely. And the reason why you can tell it's airflow related is because you don't have any heat transfer. There's no heat being absorbed by the refrigerant that's causing it to become superheated. Remember, this refrigerant is becoming superheated. It's evaporating, boiling off, however you want to think of it. And then after it boils off, it continues to warm up. Just like the air outside. It's not liquid, let's say. I hope this is going to be a good example coming here in the spur of the moment. The air is not liquid outside, but it's still able to heat up. When you're at that change of state between liquid and gas, it's like a flat line until you get that change of state. But once you have that change of state, you start superheating that evaporated gas or that newly evaporated gas. But to evaporate the gas in the first place, you have to be absorbing heat into the refrigerant. So if you have zero superheat, you're not absorbing heat. Airflow is low. The coil is blocked. It can be dirty. Filter can be dirty. Anything that affects airflow across the coil. The blower can be working fine, and then you could have blocked coil. You could have a blocked filter. You could have a crushed duct. You could have a whole lot of different stuff, but it all comes back to airflow. It's just different versions of airflow problems. The blower can definitely cause the problem. Blowers can go bad. ECM blowers can go haywire. We'll run at the wrong speed. You can burn up a blower, run at a low speed, then go off on thermal overload, then come back on. Run capacitor on a PSC blower can be weak, causing it to run inefficiently. There's small changes that can account for these issues. And it doesn't mean you have a glaring failure. It doesn't mean the blower's not working at all. Just might be working on the wrong speed. Might be failing, but not completely failed. And you can say that is completely failed, but it's not to the point where it's not working at all. So that's an airflow issue. The superheat being really, really low. Now, if the superheat was extremely high, let's say we go in there and we have a superheat of 54, and then you have a subcooling of 14, 20, relatively high subcooling, 25. So you have a bunch of refrigerant, and what that subcooling number is telling you is that there is plenty of refrigerant in the condenser. There's so much refrigerant in the condenser that is stacking liquid back higher in the condenser than it normally would. Typically, there's a point in which the condenser turns all that superheated gas coming out of the compressor. It cools it down. It becomes liquid. It continues to cool. Just like superheated gas continues to heat and warm up, the subcooled liquid continues to cool after it becomes liquid. That's why it's called subcooled liquid. So if it's continuing to cool 25 degrees, then it's probably backed up into that condenser, raising the head pressure maybe, causing it to cool more than it normally would, causing it to, it's basically, consider it like traffic. It's backed up. Now, if traffic's backed up, then there must be a reason why, and that is a restriction in the line. TXV failure, piston clogged, line crushed, service valve closed, all sorts of reasons why that can happen. Just restriction in the line, dryers, any sort of restriction. Improper line sizing, if you're going to a unit for the first time. There are reasons that it can run inefficiently from the very beginning. A lot of times it won't be quite that bad because you'd probably have a service call pretty quickly on that unit. But it can be a smaller degree of that, where maybe subcooling's 15 and you still have 25 degrees of superheat, where the house is being cooled, but it could be a whole lot better. And maybe they don't notice the difference. Maybe it's oversized, where the lack of capacity hasn't become a big concern because they're still comfortable. Because even though the unit is inefficient, it's so oversized that even in its inefficient capacity, it can still handle the load because it was oversized originally. Happens all the time. Units that run poorly can still manage a load because they're oversized. They just cost a lot more, and it's just a pain in the buttocks. Now, let's say that you walk up on a unit, and the subcooling is 0 or 1 or half of 1. And your superheat is high, like 30 or 40. So you have no refrigerant backed up in the condenser, meaning the condenser is starving for refrigerant, and you have high superheat, meaning the evaporator is also starved, meaning there's not enough refrigerant to cause that evaporator to work harder. That's kind of a weird way to say it. Work harder or take longer to change the state from a liquid gas mix going through the TXV or orifice or whatever into a fully gaseous refrigerant that becomes superheated. So it's becoming superheated so quickly because there's not enough refrigerant to cause that process to delay to later in the evaporator. It's superheating way beyond what it should if there was a normal amount of refrigerant in that coil. So if you have starved refrigerant on one side, starved refrigerant on the other side, then you have low refrigerant. So there's a lot you can tell from the readings, the temperatures that you have. When you compare the saturation temperatures of a coil to what you have coming out, it's pretty glaring. If your saturation temperature for your R22 evaporator coil is 27 degrees, yet you have a superheat of 45, there's an issue there. It's restricted, or there's not enough refrigerant in the system. A lot of times these things fall into the same categories, yet there can be different manifestations of each instance, meaning you could have a restriction in 20 different areas. You could have refrigerant leaks in a whole bunch of different areas, but they'll manifest in a similar way. But you got to figure that out. That's the fun of being a service tech. I mean, that's what it's all about. To me, that was the best part about it. It's figuring out what was going on. Now, I had twofold here, and we'll wrap up with this. Twofold fun things of being a service tech. One, troubleshooting, and two, the lottery of not knowing what kind of payday you were going to get. I really did enjoy this because if you found a dead compressor, I was a self-owned company, one-man company. If I found a dead compressor, hey, that's good money right there. I wasn't finding dead compressors that weren't dead, mind you, but I was awful happy when I got to do some work where I earned some money. And I did enjoy that you never really knew what was going to happen. Oh, you'd probably you'd make some money. You'd find different things. You change run capacitors, you make money. But I always enjoyed you didn't know what you were going to get into on both the business side and the troubleshooting side. I think that drove my wife crazy on the business side because you don't know what you're going to get into that day. For a guy who does mostly service, I mean, what if you don't find anything that's a high dollar earner for like a week or 2 weeks? But I got to tell you, in the HVAC industry, it evens out over time. If you do right by your customers, you call them like you see them, you charge them a fair amount, you're going to find plenty of everything as you grow. I never found a time when it's like, I've only done capacitors all month. It never happened. I'd always have a compressor. I'd have to change a unit because it was just so bad off, or an evaporator, or a condenser coil, or accumulator. There was always something out there to change. And if you do it long enough, you never really have to worry about that. But, I mean, wives, they don't think about that. Sometimes wives are like, hey, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? How are we going to buy that new Land Rover? I do not have a Land Rover, by the way. I cannot afford one. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. I had a lot of fun talking about different things. If you want to talk about something in specific, well, that doesn't sound correct, specifically, then put it in the comments. Shoot me an email, hvacshoptalk@gmail.com. I'll be back to see you guys real soon. Stay tuned for some new videos. I have all sorts of ideas swirling in my head for stuff that will educate and entertain you guys, so stay tuned for that. If you're not subscribed, think about subscribing. If you want to help support the channel, think about becoming a channel member. You can do that by hitting the join button on the screen or hit a little $sign in the live chat. They said that it gives you an option for joining there. I thought it was just super chats, which are one-time donations to the channel, but it says you can do join as well. We do like a monthly support thing. So if you do that, we have several guys who do that. Thank you to those guys. I think there's 10 of you guys out there, so I really do appreciate that. My name is Zach Ciota. This is the HVAC Shop Talk podcast, and I will see you guys on the next one. If you want to watch more videos just like this one, click on this playlist right here. If you want to see our brand new video, click right here. If you want to find out more about the great sponsors that make this show happen, click up here. And to join our email list where I notify you when we're going live, click right here.